I think it's fair to say that the Bond franchise enjoyed a bit of a renaissance back in the mid-90s. From 1962's Dr. No to 89's License to Kill, a new movie dropped almost every year, with the latter being one of the most gritty, down-to-earth interpretations of the character brilliantly brought to life by the always underrated Timothy Dalton.
That was damn stupid!
Sadly, it was ahead of its time and failed to achieve success at the box office, which forced the powers involved to take a 6-year breather.
You earned it. You keep it, old buddy.
1995 saw a resurgence of the not-so-subtle secret agent with the release of GoldenEye. Pierce Brosnan's debut as the debonair protagonist rekindled interest in the series. It put asses in the seats in cinemas everywhere, but it also launched a new wave of Bond-based video games with the help of Rare under the Nintendo brand. To this day, GoldenEye on the N64 remains one of the most popular movie-licensed properties there is, with many nostalgia-based fans believing it to be the pinnacle of all 007 games. I'm not sure I'd agree with that, but I'll certainly credit the console-exclusive shooter for kicking off what I consider to be the best decade-long stretch of Bond-related interactive experiences. And this handheld entry is up there for me. James Bond 007 is a Sapphire-developed, Nintendo-published action-adventure game released for the battery-draining brick in 1988. It's a weird one in many ways that we'll explore in a bit, but straight out of the gate, I just need to say that this thing is the Bondest Bond has ever been in the gaming realm. In this thing, you'll be forced to do some sleuthing, trading, shooting, and suggestive sexing as you trot around the world to put a stop to an evil plan. The plot that kicks everything off is a bit nebulous, but after a mission or so, the pieces start to make more sense. Basically, you take control of a nondescript pastiche of the secret agent that is more of an amalgamation of all the Bonds in a variety of scenarios that play out as an homage to the series as a whole. The entire parcel confidently wrapped in a comfortable, Zelda-like control scheme that works exceptionally well. Outside of a few text-based adventures and point-and-click games, the Bond series has mostly relied on action up to this point, which has always felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of the character in my eyes. This late entry on the portable Nintendo device does more than that.
Bring tears to your eyes.
Bond's adventure begins in China, where the game's mechanics are introduced in reasonable, bite-sized bits. Fetch quests take on a major role as this thing unfolds, so you'll need to search everything with one of the action buttons. You find stuff in order to get the ball rolling. It's admittedly an antiquated mechanic, but Bond moves around quickly, especially when he's walking on an angle, so it's really not that big of a deal to click on every surface to find hidden items. Personally, I find it pretty relaxing in a weird way. Similarly to Link's Awakening, the 2 button slots can be filled with anything in your inventory, so you'll be swapping things out frequently. Med packs, weapons, gadgets, and progress-pushing items will need to be clicked on manually. As I said, things start out simple, but by the second area, you'll be expected to pay attention to the things you gather and how they can be used to push the story forward. Fortunately, the Bond jingle plays every time something gets dumped into your inventory, with a visual aid appearing next to your A and B boxes at the bottom. A lot of the beats are driven by text boxes, which is good because things are written out well, with classic 007 flourishes. Series regulars Moneypenny, M, and Q are all here with dialogue that suits their characters. If you annoy the quartermaster, he'll brush you off in a way that would make Desmond Llewellyn proud, and messing around in his laboratory often leads to silly results.
right, sit down and make yourself comfortable.
It's very clear that these developers knew exactly what they were doing here. On the surface, this might look like a cute, casual Bond game, but that's definitely not the case. A lot of the clues can be downright cryptic at times, and things get extremely dark in the latter half. Bond's actions lead to some weighty consequences in the second to last stage, but we'll get there a bit later. This is a cartoony looking thing, but the violence and sexual overtones can be quite explicit at times, which I find refreshing. It's not exactly an easy game either, with tons of confusing mazes to make your way through. The art style is simple, but that's to be expected from the hardware. All of the environments are as detailed as they need to be, and nothing is confusing to look at. The character sprites are extremely well drawn and brought to life with terrific little animations. This dude really doesn't like potatoes. Drinking, smoking. Are these people seriously drinking and smoking? I mean, think about the children, Nintendo, you heathens. And how about these ladies? I don't think I've ever been so turned on by 8-bit graphics. I'm pretty sure Bond bangs this giant one. Man, with the golden gun, naval jewels. For England, of course.
James? For England.
For England, Alec.
Eric Nunemaker, Brent Lambert, and Nathan Davidson help tie everything together with a fitting chiptune soundtrack, though 3 people seems a bit much for what's here. There are a few renditions of the Bond theme that play throughout, and quite a few original numbers, but it's not something I'd listen to on its own. The Game Boy has the ability to sound really good, and while the arrangements are certainly passable here, they are anything but memorable. They merely get the job done. Bond has a few weapons at his disposal, ranging from pistols, machine guns, and grenades, but the combat isn't something everyone will enjoy. There's a limited amount of ammo, but I was pretty fine fisting my way through baddies for the majority of the game. It's a bit of a clumsy system where you'll need to exploit the enemy's AI at times, but I didn't mind it. Grenades are absolutely devastating if your aim is on point, and the machete is all sorts of fun. If I had to make one minor complaint, it's that baddies often hang around too close to the edges of the screen, which can result in taking damage when transitioning to a new area, but they drop enough health replenishing items to make it a fairly trivial problem. Health packs can be found everywhere to be used at any time, but enemies also drop bandages that work to patch Bond up slightly. It isn't necessary to eliminate everyone in your path, but it's wise to at least wipe out the majority of them. On top of healing items, they also cough up ammo. There's a specific tough guy in a mission who drops a very crucial item required to progress. The game isn't entirely combat focused, but I'll put it this way, if you don't like the fighting mechanics straight out of the gate, you're probably not going to enjoy this thing at all. The skirmishes become much more frequent as things progress, and the goons don't get any easier. I'm dwelling on this point because I think it's likely to be the thing that turns the most people off. There's a good amount of variety in the missions. Some are straightforward, but the majority will require more than a bit of thought. For instance, in Marrakesh, you'll need to trade a bunch of stuff to work your way up to a pair of night vision goggles. This sequence begins with Bond uncharacteristically lifting a chicken from a vendor in order to get a cat to kill a room full of mice to earn a pearl for a passport. There are a few minor things that occur in between these beats, and the stages are very large, so it'll likely take you a while on your first go. You'll even get the opportunity to play a variety of card games in the casino as part of the mission in order to earn enough money to attract a target to a private baccarat table. While he's here, you'll need to sneak around a series of secret passageways until you end up behind a wall where you can shoot him to earn a key. It's insane how this all unfolds. Ultimately, the slower pace feels more like the events that play out in one of Ian Fleming's Bond books, rather than the over-the-top action bits from the films. It's so good. I really don't want to spoil too much, but a couple of henchmen return from the series. The first half of of the game will have you trying to pin Oddjob down in order to get him to rat out his employers. These encounters lead to some surprising twists, including one scenario where he strips Bond of his med packs to leave him stranded in the desert. There are no cutscenes, so you'll be playing out all of these events in real time, and it adds so much character to the game. There's an early mission where Bond travels to the Middle East to rescue a captured 008. This is all well and good, but the penultimate stage in the game will have you revisiting this area after it has been torn apart by another faction. The majority of the people you had previously gotten to know have been left to die, and it's seriously suggested that this bombed out war zone is at least partially a result of your meddling in the affairs of these citizens. There's some gruesome imagery here, with vultures feasting off the carcasses of the dead. At a certain point, you'll even need to navigate through a maze-like field while bombs drop. When Bond reaches the villages beyond, he'll get the opportunity to chat with the people responsible who are being forced to mortar the surrounding areas against their will. It's seriously messed up, and this guy still really can't stand peeling potatoes. What's worse is that these horrific events are juxtaposed with silly bits played for a few laughs, such as this one big bad who talks a mighty game but turns out to be a coward who surrenders after one hit. It's a funny moment, but I'm not sure I approve of how these things play out. On one hand, I appreciate the adult themes and how these developers weren't afraid to get gritty. On the other, the gags are pretty insensitive and jarring. I got to know these people the first time I was here. Seeing their homes bombed out and their bodies being picked apart had an impact on me. To have all of this culminate in a scuffle with a Middle Eastern terrorist who ends up being a literal joke felt a bit mean-spirited. Sure, it was a funny moment, and yeah, I laughed, but it made me feel like kind of a scumbag. In conclusion, James Bond 007 is one of the more authentic video games based off of the franchise. The espionage, action, women, and quips are all here. It's a lengthy, well-designed adventure with a lot of heart. Some of the stages are a bit confusing, and the last area is a repetitive, frustrating maze to navigate through, but it's possible to save at any time, so it never gets too out of hand. There is an optional side quest that unlocks a different ending, which is a nice touch as well. If you haven't played this Game Boy title, I really can't recommend it enough. Even if you're not a Bond fan, there's enough here to keep you entertained for hours. A lot of people refer to this thing as an RPG, which frankly pisses me off a lot more than it should. This is an action-adventure title. I'm not sure why this gets me so worked up, but it does. Zelda is not an RPG, and this thing is a lot like Zelda. Figure it out, people. Next time on this channel, more Bond, well, sorta. So, stay tuned.